weird European.
That's gonna go so good in this video.
I know, right?
Tell him you're gonna have to be an editing god to fix what you just did there.
Cast. We just finished discussing about the BlizzCon stuff and also the Nintendo quarterly investor meeting. So now we're going to be talking a few more topics. And one of the most talked about things right now, with no shock whatsoever, is Death Stranding. As Otaku Vaughn had put for the topic, is it a prime example of what hype and boosting can do to a game, or is it a good game? A lot of reviewers are having a very difficult time reviewing this game because it is very different from anything before it, as Mr. Kojima had sought out to do. He purposely tried to make his own genre. And so some reviewers absolutely love it. They recognize the art behind it, and others think it's just a walking simulator. And it apparently has a slow burn. It takes about 10 hours to really get into the game, and most people are not willing to do that. They're not willing to go for that payoff.
They're weak.
They're weak. They're too weak for Mr. Kojima-san.
That man's a legend.
He is a legend. And when you play his games, you don't play his games primarily for the mechanics. You play for the storyline, the purpose behind what you're doing. And with the game, go ahead.
Plenty of people play to hide in a cardboard box.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
That's a great
true.
mechanic.
Yeah, well, and Metal Gear Solid 5 was a solid game. It was a blast going and doing stealth missions. There were so many different things you could do in that game. But this one, the people call it a walking simulator because people thought that he was not showing anything, that he was hiding what the true purpose of the game was. When he even did gameplay footage at Tokyo Game Show, he did like an hour-long gameplay demo. And he showed exactly what you're supposed to do in the game. You really are a guy that works as a delivery man. So in this world of the Death Stranding, essentially, the whole world has basically, on a societal level, has collapsed. And so your main character is one of the few means of communication for everyone that has everyone's kind of became nomads and hermits, essentially.
No, nomads.
Pronunciations really not your forte.
3 and 24 now, but who's counting?
Oh, all right. But so with that, he actually has connections to some pretty important people in America. So what essentially is the group that's trying to bring the United States back together, he has a connection to them. And so they try to use his position where he goes to places to do deliveries to try to connect the country back together, to bring the country back together. And so people were expecting there to be a lot of action, shooting, and stuff like that. While there is some of that, really your primary thing is delivering boxes or containers over to people, and you make connections to those people. And so you have to, when you're walking to those places, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you don't fall. You have to, if you're trying to go up a mountain, you have to get a ladder and go up of it. And you have to think about when you're putting the boxes on the container that you're holding it with on a perfect way, or they'll fall. So you have to really think about the way you get to point A to point B. It's not so much you trying to kill and shoot someone. It's trying to get to the next point in the game.
Not that I've claimed to know much about Death Stranding, because I really haven't looked that much into it. But I think what Kojima actually wants, based on what you just said, is he wants a journey.
Yes.
He wants a journey to who knows where, because it's Kojima. But yeah.
The interesting thing is the further you get down into the game, you actually do get vehicles. Yep. So you don't always just walk. And you also get to, because, we live in a world where there's 3D printing and stuff like that. So he kind of tries to make a more futuristic version of that, more of a, I wouldn't say necessarily a satire, kind of a reflection of ours, just a little bit more advanced on our social media and on how 3D printing works. And so you can 3D print weapons and different things like that. You can basically build a container to hold some boxes when you're at a halfway point, and you can also build a generator to charge your vehicles and all kinds of stuff. And I don't see why reviewers are so confused by this game. I don't get it. The one reviewer that seemed to understand it, and me and Dane are both fans of this guy. He's on YouTube. It's Young Ye. He did a 30-minute video, and he did it spoiler free for the most part. And he did a really good job of explaining the game. That's why I'm able to explain it on the podcast, because I watched his 30-minute video, and he made me much more interested in it than before.
I just bought the game.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. I got the
That's how I
collector's.
understand it.
Yeah, I got the collector's edition. So I have the BB collector thing and everything. The little baby, it glows and everything. And I told my wife that I'm gonna like one night like put it on her nightstand and turn it on. And she said, if you do that, I'm gonna kill you if you try to do something like that. And it is really creepy looking.
It's amazing.
Yes.
My big thing with reviewers is, especially for games nowadays, is there's trying to think of the best way. These long-standing games. So take another game that I think is a applicable one. It's granted it's a few years dated now, but Final Fantasy 15 is a long game that is a journey.
It's a slow burn too.
It's a slow burn, but it got critical acclaim because people know what Final Fantasy is, everything like that. But games like those usually don't do well with today's media in that way. To kind of go back to the Overwatch thing, it's PvP. Everybody wants online, fast pace, get in, get out,
Right.
Fortnite type games, PUBG, stuff like that. Everybody wants that. So when you come out with these long telling story type these long winded story type games, not a lot of people want to sit down and play them for the entire time. I'm not one of them. Please don't think I'm one of them.
Right.
I love long games like that. I can play them for hours. Shoot, for FF15, I'll sit and do the fishing mini game for.
He's like Big the Cat.
Fun,
It's right. It's fun, but it's just a lot of reviewers today also just they're looking for something quick. They're not looking for something that they have to spend. I don't know exactly.
Well, they have to play a lot of games.
Right. I agree.
That's weird too. Don't they get the game early?
Yeah.
Usually.
With that one, they gave plenty of time. Like Young Ye said that he had 3 weeks.
That's really good especially for a long running game like that. But
Yeah.
just
That shows the confidence also that Kojima had.
the man has every reason to be confident.
Yeah, he's Kojima. I mean, come on now.
But just these long running games don't usually do well nowadays, and I'm hoping Death Stranding does good.
I think it will, but the main reason is because he has an all-star cast.
Yes,
I mean, he has Norman Reedus. He has Mads. What's his last name? Michelson. He has quite a few other people that are pretty big. He's got a few little Easter egg characters. He has Conan.
Oh, nice.
Conan's in it.
It's a playable movie.
Yeah.
That's fine though. That's those.
See, that's a very important thing to have brought up, because the last playable movie didn't get very great critical acclaim. It was what is the name of that?
Detroit Last Human.
Okay, well, sorry.
Beyond Two Souls.
That's the same people.
Yes,
That's all the same people. That's the same
company.
developer.
Yeah, Wolf, I think his name is, but who cares? Let's
It's
not
a French guy.
Let's not go over to that guy. Not those. I'm talking about one of the big AAA ones.
The Last of Us.
No,
that's
Red
not a
Dead
playable
Redemption?
movie. That's not a playable movie either.
That's got
It's a
pretty
really
long
angry god
scenes.
with no. It's a really angry god with 6 arms. Help me out.
Oh, Ashura.
Ashura. Thank you, because I couldn't remember his name.
What's the name of the game?
Ashura's Wrath.
Ashura's Wrath.
I don't remember.
It's an old Capcom game that's really, really good.
It's just like God of War.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Except it is more so a playable movie.
Yeah.
Like that is literally what it is, because it is a movie with like smash cutscenes.
Ninja Theory's game is essentially a movie. The one that they came out with like a year or two ago. The one that talks about mental health.
Hellblade.
Hellblade.
Telltale Games.
Yeah, Telltale Games.
Yeah, all Telltale games are functionally
Well,
that.
Telltale's back,
But it's a different.
but not the same
Am
people.
I getting Batman season 3 or not?
Probably.
I want it.
It's
It's the only
it's
title
their
that they should
moneymaker.
like strictly carry over because the Batman Telltale universe is really good.
Yeah,
The only thing I didn't.
We're
I
gonna
know. Off topic.
We'll have to
I
talk.
could rant about this game forever.
It is an enjoyable game.
Yeah, but going back to what I was trying to say though is that the actual playable movie is a really simple way of putting it, but what it is it is a immersive.
Experience.
Well, no, it's an immersive, atmospheric, objective game. And I know that seems like a kind of weird thing to call it, and that's probably not what the genre is going to be called when we
I
get
forgot
done with
he
it.
he does he calls it the Stranding genre or something like that.
And I'm pretty sure they're going to come up with a term for it. But the whole point of it is that you have an objective, and in the process of completing that objective, like most video games, there's a gameplay loop that you have to get through. The process of completing the objective is not just to do the objective for objective sake. Because if you do the objective just for the objective sake, you're playing a walking simulator. That is true. If you only do what you need to do in the
Right.
game, you're completely missing the point of the game. The point of the game is that here is a handcrafted, very artistic and atmospheric world. Experience it while
And
doing your objective.
there's a social aspect to it later in the game. So you get to a certain point where you can see other players' creations in the world. So somebody could make some ladders that go up mountains in a funny way, and you can go climb up their mountains. It's kind of like and then you can leave little messages and stuff like that, kind of like Dark Souls. And then also like Young Ye said that somebody left like vehicles behind and stuff like that. You can leave guns behind for people, stuff like that. There's buildings you can make. So there's a lot more to the game. There's a lot to explore, especially when you get to that part. You can see there's a social aspect to it.
It's almost like he wants us to reconnect with
Yes.
each other.
Almost like that's the whole reason for the game. I don't understand why reviewers are confused by this game.
Because they don't get it.
They don't get it. They're not like, not to trash on some of them, but they just don't get it. They're not smart
They're-
enough to get it.
Beat senseless with Call
They're
of
just-
Duty.
They're so set on how RPG games are supposed to run and how shooters are supposed to run. And if you don't go in this, there's a certain frame of
Formula.
which
They got in a
formula,
formula, yeah.
yeah, and they think that's how it's supposed to go. But there's other games that haven't gone by formula before, and they don't treat it the way they're treating this.
Well, no, look, let's go back to some of the core things here. And here are the big three things as far as why this is the way it is. One, we are currently in a culture of instant gratification,
Yes,
right? We want things immediate, fort straight, outright, just
they
get
want
there.
the Fortnite, they want the Apex Legends, they
Oh,
want
PUBG.
We,
PUBG.
we want to win, and we want to win within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like we want whatever is the objective or victory of the game in 30 minutes or less, preferably as quickly as possible. That's what looter shooters functionally are. Kill the boss as fast as you can, get your loot as fast as you can.
So most games are designed to they create a game mechanic and then they build the world around it,
The gameplay cycle.
the gameplay cycle. With this game, what Kojima did was he built the narrative, he built the world, and then he added the gameplay mechanics in. The focus is the narrative, the focus is the world. It's not all about the mechanics, it's about what you live and breathe into this world.
Well, the point being is right. I wanted to tell this story.
Yes.
And this is the whole point is that video games are a storytelling medium,
Yes.
as Telltale has proven. But more importantly, this is a true video game. Telltale lacks a lot of video game mechanics because it's functionally just
You point and
it's
click.
You
It's a point and click game
With
kind
a
of.
few action time events.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very basic as a video game. That is Telltale's, I guess you could say, flaw in the video gaming industry. Great stories, but poor video game mechanics. Well, here we have the same thing where we went story focused, but now we have much more in the form of video game mechanics because there's a lot more depth to Kojima's game than there is to any Telltale game as far as playing the game.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So on to the second point is that gameplay cycles are just functionally in our current modern culture just dopamine inhibitors, or it's not inhibitors, but the whole point of the cycle is to get the dopamine rush in a constant and consistent
Right.
way. So in looter shooters, it's explore, find an enemy, kill the enemy, pick up your gun. The gun's your dopamine, right? And you want to repeat that gameplay cycle over and over again to get to your dopamine hit.
Yep.
So if the same thing for platformers, or just across every other game you can find where this is.
MMOs would be like the rating scene.
Right.
Yes.
Where you're trying to complete the cycle. In MMOs, it's grind for your gear, meet up with your friends, do the raid, dopamine.
Yeah.
Grind up for the gear, meet up with your friends, do the raid, dopamine. You just hit this cycle over and over and over again. Well, now let's look at Death Stranding. Where's the cycle?
It's not there.
Because you could say that it's get the package, deliver the package. Wait, well, where's my watch a cutscene? Is the cutscene my dopamine, or is delivering the package my dopamine?
Right. But
It's really hard to see it.
It's harder because an example of where you don't have as much of a cycle would be Breath of the Wild, where there's a lot of freedom.
Oh yeah.
But
You
there's
create your own
there's
cycle at that
yeah,
point.
you make your own cycle, but there's a lot of action you can do with Breath of the Wild. Whereas from the sounds of it, there's not a whole bunch of shooting and killing and
No, not
Death
really.
Stranding.
In the maybe 4 or 5 hours I've played.
How'd you get it early?
Well, let me put it to you like this. When I say I've played, I haven't played. I've watched people play.
Okay, I was about
So
to say,
that's a
we-
complete.
how are you going to do that to the podcast and not give
No,
me a
no,
hookup?
No. I've just had access to some people sharing gameplay streams. So
Okay.
I've played. I should have been. I've watched, played. But my point being is that from what I've watched overall, I find that
Right.
the game itself is really not focused on that, and you're not going to get a gameplay loop out of that. It just doesn't. That's not the way this game is going to work.
No.
Instead, you have to get your dopamine hit like you do if you're reading a book,
When you-
which is kind of strange, but you got to realize that you can get the same effect, right?
You
just have to
definitely can.
you have to get to the part of the book where this is that wow moment that gives you that rush. And the game's the same way. The world builds itself up. You immerse yourself in the story. You join the world, and then when the critical events of the world happen, that's when you're going to get your hit. And everything else is going with that process. Delivering those packages is no different than turning a page.
What this sounds like to me is similar to like some store like RPGs that are to give you the example because it's all I freaking play is 14. Once you get to the end of the game, early on it's specifically Shadowbringers because that's what's most recent in my head. Once you get to the end of the game, you don't want to stop because there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of stuff, and then honestly the final boss fight is such a rush that
the build up for it.
It's perfectly built up. Like it's same with books. The Dresden Files is an extreme, like really good book series. If you guys haven't read them,
Wheel of Time's a slow burn.
Game of Thrones,
yeah,
despite
Yeah.
the twists and turns.
it just you want that rush at the end. Like for me, it's the rush of an end of a story that I really like, and that's why I like these long-winded RPGs and stuff like that. And that's
And there are boss fights in
Yeah.
this game. There are people you do
yeah,
attack. There is that element to it too. Apparently the boss fights are breathtaking. A lot of people don't even know how to describe because it's Kojima. He probably has a bunch of dead whales everywhere. Some
But-
baby coming out somebody's throat.
but the point being though is that yes, it is truly a game. That's the most important thing. What Kojima has managed to do is take the best aspects of Telltale's and then combine it with the core of video gaming.
People have to understand one thing about Kojima. He loves movies. He's a movie guy.
Mhm.
Like he watches movies. He watches at least one movie a day,
if you follow his Twitter, it's
Yeah.
it's a lot
filled
of
with movies, and
yeah.
it's obscure movies and famous movies as well. But he does a lot of obscure stuff as well.
as a lot of actors that he meets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's a huge movie buff.
Yeah. So it only makes sense that he took a lot of inspiration from movies.
Right.
And some reviewers are having a hard time accepting that because they think that video games only hold to a certain it's confined to a certain standard and it can't branch out, which doesn't make sense because there's been plenty of other video games that have tried to branch out from the usual method of
Yeah.
video games. It's just because he's a big name, especially the lowest score he's gotten from this no-name Australian site. There was a guy that gave him like a 35, and he's known for being a troll that hates PlayStation.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of that going on too. You always got to have a troll. Even in critics, there's always going to be somebody that's not really reputable. Metacritic really needs to watch who they allow on their critics review thing.
Well, it's free expression. Just let people have their day.
This
But
game has like a lot of realism in it too. I don't think people like that. Well,
Yeah.
they don't understand it in game format just yet.
Yeah.
That was a big problem with Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, a lot of people
It's
didn't like
too
the realism.
realistic.
Yeah, they didn't like the realism to Red Dead 2.
Hon-
Too. They also didn't like the final act to the game too.
Honestly, what you like from what all you've told me,
What do they?
go-
I'm sorry,
go
but what did bouncing off the Red Dead thing? What did they think was going to happen?
I don't know. I mean, have they not played the other
I guess
games?
not.
to like from what you've told me, honestly, this game that Kojima wants to make, it sounds, I don't know how long in the future, but it sounds like it was made too early, if that makes sense.
That we weren't ready for it yet.
It sounds like it should have been made for VR. It should have been made for like a true
That'd be
VR
interesting.
experiencing.
That would be interesting.
Where you actually experience the life. You
Yeah.
actually go through these events. In my opinion, that's what it feels like it should have been made for, but he wanted to get the idea out because shoot, after the whole Konami stuff, he needs a win. And honestly, this should be his win. But it just it sounds like it's perfect for a VR experience. It sounds like it's perfect for a real life experience.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, okay, sure.
But we can't get to that anytime soon.
But it's fine in the medium that it's in. Did anyone ever watch this old Kevin Costner movie? I think it's called Postman.
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly what this sounds like to me because I've been thinking about that too. Sorry, that's a really good movie. And like, I wanted to make
Great
a joke
movie.
earlier that we're playing like the most aggressive form of FedEx that I've ever seen in my life.
And that is literally what
That's
Postman is.
literally what it is. That
You're-
man is more dedicated than the post office.
Like I was gonna say, like you're telling me to stack certain boxes on a thing so that I already do that in real life. I don't want to do that in a video game.
You have to carry it on your back and everything.
That's what I'm saying. The realism.
Rain, sleet, or snow, man. Like he's just as hardcore as the U.S. Postal Service.
Yeah, I'm not saying
He's gonna
it's,
climb the mountains for you. You're gonna get your package. There might be some I don't know what there's another group of people that he has to fight, and
UPS probably.
yeah, it's probably it's the weird European.
That's gonna go so good in this video.
I know, right?
Tim, you're gonna have to be an editing god to fix what you just did there.
Just leave it in there. You're human like the rest of us.
Yeah, it happens.
Oh, that was great.
It's the weird European company DHL that's his competitor.
But follow me. So to me, right, as we go through the story, reason why I wanted to connect it to Postman is because
Can you give a synopsis on the people that have not watched Postman,
okay,
like me?
So Postman is a Kevin Costner movie that is kind of a post-apocalyptic story, much like Waterworld was. If you didn't watch,
I do know what
Waterworld
that
either.
is.
Right, but it's post-apocalyptic, and it's telling a very simple story that the world is being rebuilt, and the two central characters from it would have been insignificant in the previous world,
Okay.
but the characteristics of what they did, as well as what they carry over from their previous employment, makes them integral into the foundation of this new world. Because the hero is a postman,
Okay.
right?
But he's not really a postman.
Right. No. Right.
Well,
right.
neither is Norman Reedus' character. There's obviously more than meets the eye with him too.
Right.
Can we say delivery man? Postman just sounds weird.
No, it's very
That's
important.
that's the term though.
Yeah, but it's very important that we stick with postman. It actually is. But my point being is, yes, Kevin Costner's character finds an old U.S. post office vehicle and takes the postman jacket and the postman insignia off of a corpse that has basically died and is mummified in this vehicle. So he picks it up, and because he's picked it up, he's carrying with him all the symbolism and all the thematic weight of the U.S. Post Office. Rain, sleet, or slime, we're going to get this done. You know what I'm saying? And so his character carries that motto with him and embodies it, and it allows him to become far more important than he ever actually was by just carrying the symbolism with him
Right.
of that occupation. The villain is a car salesman. Right? And you're thinking that, like, oh, how does that make a great
I
villain?
can't dig it.
No, dude, the movie's fantastic. But my point being is the villain is a car salesman, and all the skills that are required to convince you to buy a overpriced foreign import car, right, are very well suited to convincing people in this. I'm looking at you, Matt. Yes.
You're the villain of the story.
look, all those skills are actually very relevant in convincing people to follow you in the post-apocalyptic society.
Remember that.
Charisma.
Yep. We know who our leader is going to be when the day comes.
But anyway, all the stereotypical and symbolic traits of those two professions are carried through those two characters. And even though they're very minor in today's modern society, in dire circumstances and under these horrific conditions, all of a sudden there's two of the most important characteristics you could have. It shapes the entire world as you go through the movie. And so here we have the same thing where whatever job this guy is holding up, we look at it now and it's funny to us because we're comparing him to a FedEx package handler, right?
Because that's essentially what he is.
right. But I'm sorry,
On a whole nother level.
yeah, but I'm saying, but yeah, the ability to carry a 75-pound package
On your back.
on your back and under all types of circumstances, rain, sleet, leather, slime, going over freaking mountains, and do it on which do it as he has to do it is integral to the survival of this world.
Also, one of the most important key points of this game is if your guy urinates the same spot as someone else, you're a mushroom. Someone else so if your character pees in one spot and you have a friend without knowing that you did pees in that same spot, a mushroom appears.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
For you are connected.
And if you try to look at Norman Reedus naked, he will look at you. He'll look at the camera, the free-forming camera, and block himself from you looking at him.
Yeah, there are all types of little small.
Elaborate on the baby anymore.
So
Isn't it like a respawn thing?
So the BB, its physical form exists in our world, but I guess you could say its soul exists in this other realm. And so it's your connection to that other realm when you're connected to them. So you can see the creepy looking stuff that you've seen in the trailers. And so you can avoid them and not die.
Oh, so that's it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
knew that.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
I mean, I'm sure there's more to it.
There's lore, but we have to actually get the game to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a really interesting game. I can't wait to have my hands on it on Friday. We will definitely give a little bit more of our opinion once we get to play it. Probably a little bit shorter segment. Probably just say, hey, this game's great. The reviewers were wrong. They don't know what they're talking about, except for the ones that have given it great reviews, because it's still on a good standing number. It's at 84 on Metacritic, so it's not like everybody hates it. But there's still a few that are like, the one that most people were surprised about was IGN. IGN gave it like a 65 or something.
That is surprising, actually.
6.5, sorry. But that's surprising for
Hyped the hell out of the
IGN
game.
because IGN's known for being sellouts.
Yeah.
But regardless, see, the thing for me
But
is
Kojima
this.
probably didn't try to give him money, so
Right. Like, Kojima doesn't care in
Yeah.
the first place. It's just like you can write whatever review that you want. Everyone needs to be able to form their own opinion. So at the very least, watch somebody do a let's play of the game before you actually make your final decision on whether to buy it or not. But to me, I think that it's worth investing in
yes.
just for the artistry, because that's what I'm actually here for. The music is fantastic. The cinematography is fantastic.
Yeah, that was another thing. They worked with the music artist to go along, coincide with the game.
Yeah. So I'm here really just for the art.
'Cause
That's
it's-
me.
it's-
But if you're not that guy, then maybe you will still find this to be a great game.
Yeah, if you're willing to sit down and take in the hours. If you don't have the time in your life to play a game like that, we get it. But just know that it's a game that's worth it if you're willing to wait to get.